Hello and welcome to the Sounds Goodish Podcast. Today, we're talking to my good friend Jack, who is the lead guitarist and vocalist of the technical death metal band Singularity. You also might know him for his YouTube channel, ToxicxEternity, where he plays heavy metal covers of video game songs, including the one you're hearing right now. I'm going to start this podcast off with something that Jack said to me immediately after it finished. He said, Lyle, the direction you're going with this Sounds Goodish stuff is really good. Keep in mind, he said this to me before I didn't upload for like a year. But he said, so many people ask, like, what's a way to just get good at guitar fast? And his response was like, dude, if you're asking me that, you're already losing the battle. You're not enjoying the process. And that resonated. I mean, I wish I was recording when he said it, but we did record a whole podcast, so there's that. We talk technical. At the end, we get a little bit spiritual, but both things are equally as important in this great journey we call hearing shit. Hope you enjoy. Jack, welcome to the show, my dude.
Yo, Lyle, my man. Thank you for having me, dude.
I think this is going to be a fun one because you and me are kind of on the same wavelength on a lot of things. So hopefully it's not just a bunch of two dudes like agreeing with each other a lot. But if it does devolve into that, I just want everyone to know that clearly unanimous opinion would indicate that we're on to something.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I definitely feel like you and me, we're always just on the same page regarding like music and just like gear and just, I don't know, like we're always just sitting there being like, dude, that's so sick. Like, I totally agree.
We're not above like knuckle scraping, which that's something that I admire about you is like, as great of a musician as you are and as like deep into it and as long as you've been doing it, you still are totally like in touch with your inner 14-year-old.
Hell yeah, thanks, dude.
Which I think for metal especially is kind of important because, like if there's not a little bit of that sort of like Unga Bunga knuckle scraping kind of stuff, I mean, what's the point, right?
No, for sure. Like, I'm definitely just like, at the end of the day, I'm a huge nerd when it comes to music and guitar and just all of that stuff. It's not even like this thing that I have to like work towards. It's just like this genuine, like, I look up to so many people and stuff. So I'm just kind of like, I still just want to like learn what other people have to say and stuff. Because especially with like music and stuff, it's a never ending thing. Like the knowledge that you get, whether you're talking about gear or you're talking about theory or like even just talking about bands that you've never heard of. It's like nobody can possess the infinite knowledge of all of those things. So like for me personally, I always feel like there's just so much more to like learn. So that's why, like, when I talk to you, for example, like you're always showing me some really cool stuff. So that's what it is,
There's almost not a I mean, there probably isn't a ceiling on it if you want to get technical. I mean, I guess there's human limitation, but you'll think like, oh yeah, like everything that's been done on the guitar has been done, and then you'll just see some dude fucking playing with his elbows or something, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, dude. Or just using like a whole new type of setup, whether it's like a different kind of rig or different type of like audio plugins or whatever. It's just
texture's a lot of it.
Yeah, there's always like a new crazy thing going on.
It's kind of ever evolving. I mean, I don't think that with the shredders that were around in like 2010 or whatever that you could have seen something like, I don't know, like Polyphia or Sean popping out.
It's kind of trippy when you think about it because like that's a good example. You think back to 2010. And in 2010, you had that mindset of like, well, this is it. Like, this is like, what else can possibly be done? Like with art and music and stuff, you're always just sitting there just being like, what is there? What is left? It's like there's only 12 notes, on a guitar or whatever. I guess 11. I don't know. But yeah, there's only so many notes. It's like, how can you like have these possibilities still there? And then, like you were saying, like with like Polyphia and Sean, and for anybody listening who doesn't know what those are, they're just like two really crazy bands that have like really amazing guitar playing. That's kind of a new style of guitar playing and stuff. So like when those kind of styles came out and those guys started releasing music, like that was just another example of just like, here's something new and something exciting, it keeps you super humble because you're just like, man, I'm always going to be learning and hearing like really crazy stuff, you know?
I'm gonna circle back, and I typically would start by asking, like, in the whole sphere of sort of music and audio and guitar and all that, what aspect of it do you find yourself kind of most fascinated by?
So you're saying, like, as far as like whether it's guitars or mixing or composing, that you're kind of asking.
I guess, yeah. Like, what's that big, like, kind of like lamp off in the distance that kind of draws you like a moth, like, into this sort of stuff, you know?
I want to say the music theory part of it, but not in a sense of learning the music theory, but like applying it, right? So, like, for example, like if I'm working on a video game cover and I'm dissecting like a really cool chord progression, like that's the thing that like gets me going the most, is when I'm sitting there being like, whoa, this chord is like the craziest chord I've ever heard. And I love that feeling of like adding that to like my like Pokédex or whatever, you know what I mean?
Dude, yeah, totally.
Yeah, and you're just sitting there. It's like literally, it's like you're catching Pokemon, but they're chords, you know what I mean? And then when I go and write a song, I can like open that Pokédex up and be like, oh, there's that chord. That's what I need for this situation, you know? That's really the coolest thing for me, is like just learning new ways to just do music, I guess. And I feel like, especially as guitar players, like especially with metal guitar players, like, you know, it's so easy to just to fall into that trap of like just power chords and more like, I guess what you would call it, like, it's kind of a meme, but like caveman riffs, where it's like super simple stuff.
Yeah,
I've definitely always been in that mindset of like, why can't the guitar be like a piano and have melodic phrasing of chords and like voicings and stuff like that? So like when I hear like a super cool chord, even if it's not originally played on a guitar, but when I learn it on the guitar, I'll get like super stoked about that and just be like, yes, this is the coolest chord I've ever heard, you know? And sometimes I won't even know what the chord is, like what it's called technically, but I'll just be like, it's that chord. It's the 4, 5, 6 chord, like fretting chord, you know?
Yeah, you kind of know it by hand shapes.
Yeah, exactly. I would say, like, out of all of the musical elements of, you know, doing music and stuff, like, I would say that aspect of it, just discovering new ways to play your instrument, like that's what gets me like the most excited.
Yeah, I mean, like, even at your level, like you're still going on that, you know, like it doesn't really end.
And that's what's so crazy. It's like we were talking about before, where it's like you think you just know it all, you know, like you're just like, bro, there's only like so many frets on a guitar and there's only so many ways I can like contort my hand, and you're like, what is there left to do? You know, and it's almost like when you're in that mindset, like that's when the new chord happens and you're like, whoa, this is a game changer, you know? It's cool because sometimes these chords don't sound good by themselves, but then you'll hear it, like it's all about the context, right? So if you're playing like a D major chord, which is like a super basic chord, right? But then maybe this new chord, which sounds really dumb by itself, but you know, if you put it after the D major, it totally has this vibe to it, and it's like so weird and different. Yeah, it's like something that you would initially write off as being like not musical, but then in that particular context, you're just like, yes, that is a new thing, and that sounds awesome, you know?
Yeah, the kind of like tension creating, like ugly chords.
Exactly. Yeah.
Most people here probably would know you from your YouTube channel, but you also are in like a more traditional band called Singularity. So you've kind of tasted like both sides of the coin. I don't know why I said tasted, but you've kind of hit it from like both angles. The more old school, like 4 dudes who are friends, play instruments, start a band, but then you've also done like the sort of new agey, like I'm gonna record in my bedroom on the internet.
Right.
How do those differ? And like, what do you think you've gotten out of each?
Ooh, man, that's such a cool question, because there's so many answers that immediately are coming to my mind. First of all, like the two of them are super different. And I love that, because I want them to be different. The biggest difference with my band compared to myself making music, on YouTube, is that I am 1/4 of the whole thing. Because we're a 4-piece band, and I am just the guitar player. I mean, technically I'm a vocalist too, but in terms of the instrumental landscape of it, I am 1/4 of the whole band. And just that factor alone makes it so cool, because the teamwork element of it is so fun. It's almost like we're a sports team, but we're not doing sports or whatever, but it's just the idea of being I'm the guitar player, he's the drummer, he's the bass player, that's the keyboard player. We all have a job. That social element of it makes it so different, and that's really enjoyable, But at the same time, it also makes doing it all yourself fun, because sometimes you do just want to be no one can tell me otherwise, and this is all my choices, and so they both kind of bounce off of each other. And what I've found is that if I'm doing YouTube content and I'm just getting burnt out, or I'm just not feeling inspired or whatever, usually going to a band rehearsal or playing a concert with my band will just be the most refreshing, energizing experience, because it's the antidote to that, But then it's also converse the other way, where if I'm playing stuff a show with my band and we're having a disagreement about what to do for a song or whatever, and I'm just oh God, this is so draining, it's whatever, etc. Then going home and doing music by myself is the antidote for that feeling, So they both bring out the best, if that makes sense. They both fix the negatives of each other, and it just makes it so I can focus on the positives of everything, So that's really cool. And then, so I could talk about this forever, dude, but
go on. Yeah. It's a podcast. I mean, if you got interesting things to say, that's why I asked you.
Hell yeah. Yeah. So that's one part of it. But then there's also the musical part, I guess, because obviously in my band, it's we're writing music, and that's composing original music. And that definitely scratches an itch that, covering music doesn't scratch. And that's not to say that I like it more or whatever. It's I was saying, it's totally this 50-50 situation, but it definitely makes it different, because it's you're just whipping something out of thin air. You're you start with nothing, and then suddenly you're writing this song. And that's the part where I was talking about earlier, how when you learn a cool new vocabulary on music, whether it's a chord or a melody or something, you can apply that to writing your own music. So it's that's an example of my YouTube stuff, learning video game themes and arranging them. That's an example of that intertwining with the band too. So it's it's crazy, because it's some things separate them from each other, but then other things combine them, So it's cool to do both, for sure.
Has there ever been any weird instance of a banjo kazooie melody line working its way into a tech death song or something?
Yeah, it's funny because I have this chord that I really like to do, and I'm sure there's a name for it, but I literally just call it the Star Fox chord, because it's this chord that is all over the Star Fox 64 soundtrack, which is one of my favorite video game soundtracks. And I just call it the Star Fox chord because it just sounds like they use it in every Star Fox song, When I was working on arrangements for those covers, that's one of those chords that I was oof, you're mine now. I want that chord, So that I just call it the Star Fox chord. So and I use it all the time in my band Singularity, and it's funny because people will be dude, that chord sounds so spacey, and I'm well, it's in a game about space.
Yeah, that's killer.
So there it is,
As far as, the more industry, business aspect of it, would you say that you would get more opportunities like that from saying I'm Jack from Singularity, or are they coming to you now more as, ToxicxEternity?
It's still about 50-50. I feel like it's almost like it's in this like perfect harmony at the moment. But like when I first started working with ESP, for example, they were just like, bro, we love your stuff, we love your music. And in my mind, I assumed it was the ToxicxEternity stuff, only because that was more active at the time, because we were just in like writing mode, so we weren't doing a whole lot of like Singularity content at the time. And so I made that assumption that it was for the ToxicxEternity, but then they kind of followed it up with like, yeah, we would love for you to do a Singularity song. And I was like, oh, interesting. Like, so you like my band? And they're like, yeah, what else is there? And I'm just like, oh, you didn't even know about, you know. And obviously they know about it now, but I'm kind of like going with the flow of like the initial excitement for them on me was like my band. So I'm just like, hey, let's just do my band stuff if you guys are stoked on that. But then literally like the other company that I work with, which is Kettner, which is an amplifier company, they're like, we love your YouTube content. You know, it's totally like this weird like double life in the industry that I'm living, you know. But I kind of just go with the flow, like whatever they want me to do, I'm like, yeah, let's do it, you know.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
I wasn't sure how to like deal with that at first, because I'm like, is there something, I was asking myself, I'm like, is there something that I should like push more? But I kind of just ended up being like, dude, whatever they want me to do, like I'll do it. Like I like it all, so you know, whatever.
This is kind of an unrelated, maybe boring question, but do you have like 2 business cards? You know what I mean?
Yeah, my ToxicxEternity business card, I would say that's more of like my main business card, whereas the band one is kind of almost like a flyer. You're like, here, check out my band, you know. I got double full stacks of business cards on me all the time.
Fuck yes. That was my one American Psycho question that I have to know. I just have to know. But changing gears, this is maybe a little factoid that I just know from being your pal. You're actually left-handed, but you play right-handed guitar.
Yep. Yeah.
And you fucking rip. So definitive answer, is that the way to go if you are left-handed? And what does that kind of come with?
So, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, I'll never know what it's like to be right-handed. So I can't be like, oh, it's so much better than being right-handed. You know what I mean? But I know what you're asking, like, as far as like, should I have gotten a left-handed guitar or should I do? Obviously playing a right-handed guitar, being left-handed, it definitely is different because your fretting hand is the dominant hand, and I can definitely feel the weakness sometimes in my picking hand, which I mean, I can hide it pretty well, you know what I mean? Like, so I'm not sitting here saying my picking hand sucks, but like I know everyone's their worst critic, and I can hear sometimes where like I have friends that have been playing guitar for like 2 years and they're still new to the instrument, and they're already like ripping their picking hand like faster than I could, just like raw speed, you know what I mean? And I sit there and I'm just like, well, damn, that's something I probably just can't do, you know? Which is not like, it's not like I'm giving up or whatever, but it's just like the negative way to look at it. But obviously there's the positive side of it, which is that having your fretting hand be the dominant hand, I feel like there's stuff that I do that is like super unique to me, and like I think that's just really cool. You know, it's cool to do something different on guitar because like everybody and their dog plays metal guitar, you know what I mean? So it's like anything that you can do to set yourself apart, I feel like is really cool. So I'm gonna say it was lucky because it wasn't like a conscious decision, because I started playing when I was so young. So like that was just the guitars that were around were right-handed guitars, you know.
Did you not know you were left-handed by the time you started playing? Or
I did know that I was left-handed, but I didn't know that there were left-handed guitars. So I was like, I'm left-handed, but I'll just, you know, let's just play guitar. You know, I didn't know that it was like, there was like a specific type of guitar for left-handed people, you know?
Yeah, I mean, just from like a Unga Bunga gear fun kind of perspective, like that definitely expands your options, you know, just being right-handed guitar anyway, because
oh yeah,
I'd assume like half the shit you'd see, you'd be like, oh, that's awesome, they don't make a lefty version, or you'd have to like get one custom made or something like that.
Yeah, and it's always like more expensive and stuff. For any like music nerds or guitar nerds, like what I do a lot of is like legato playing. Basically, the idea of legato playing is you're picking the least amount possible, not because you're lazy, but it has a sound and it's very liquidy and like smooth and kind of just like has like a smooth vibe to it. I mean, I think it sounds freaking cool, and you know, so that's a style that naturally developed for me because, you know, obviously my fretting hand is my dominant hand, so that's like I kind of naturally just lead with that hand, and when I pick notes, it's kind of like that's like the support role, so I'm just kind of like filling in those gaps or whatever, you know. It works for me, you know, but there's definitely times where I see someone just like rip some like alternate picking, like a million notes per minute shred thing, and I'm like, man, I kind of wish I could do that, you know. And I feel like I can, but it doesn't come naturally to me. Like I have to sit there and work at it, you know.
You're really damn good at hiding it though, so that's something. You fucking I actually tuned into one of your Twitch streams the other day, and you were playing video game covers, and man, you were fucking nailing like every single solo. You were playing some stuff that like clearly you had made a while ago. Do you actually remember like every single solo from like every cover you've done, or is there like a set playlist that you practice? Or
I remember enough of every solo I've ever made, you know. A lot of it has to do with knowing my way around the guitar and knowing like I know my own bag of tricks enough to know like it's almost like a situation of like, hey, I haven't heard this solo in like 5 years, but I feel like I would do this here. And then lo and behold, that's what I do. And it just matches, you know, like to what I recorded.
Wait, so you're kind of like half remembering and you just nail it?
Well, if you want to call it nailing it, then sure.
But I mean, you've done like hundreds of songs by this point.
Yeah.
Like if I threw a random one at you, you probably could do it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Is there like a trick to that, or is that just something you just don't have trouble with?
Well, it's something I don't have trouble with, but so much of it is you got to know the instrument and you got to know how the song goes. That's 90% of it, and the last 10% is just rehearsing it, which I don't do for my streams.
When you're going back and you're playing an old solo, are you just kind of like, okay, I could do that kind of stuff in my sleep, so it's not actually that much of an issue if I don't like know it note for note?
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely situations where I'm doing like with solos in particular, there will be like a 4-bar phrase that I'll just be like, I have no idea how this goes, but I know what would be cool here. Like, so I just improvise something, and then sometimes it ends up being the thing that I did on the recording, and then other times it'll be something that's totally different, but it's so quick that I think people they're not sitting there with a magnifying glass looking at it that hard, so they don't really notice that it's like slightly different. It's not perfect when I'm doing it in that way, but it's definitely like it allows me to play every one of my songs, which is important to me because I don't really want to stress out about streaming and stuff and like having to like learn all my songs and stuff. And another thing that I do is when I record a guitar solo for a song, a lot of it is improvised. Like, I mean, when I write it, it's improvised, but then I'll like record it, like, and I'll just make it like the best, you know, like I'll make it like super clean. But as far as like writing the licks or whatever, that's all I'll just hit record and then just like play random stuff. And I think that element of it works in my advantage there too, because when I'm performing it live and I don't know what it is, I will just improvise it again. And sometimes the two mindsets will like be the same thing, you know?
That's probably a good way to do it too, because then you don't write something that's so technical that, you know, would be outside of your normal playing ability.
Well, like what I try and do is like I will improvise my solos, but I will make a conscious effort to be like, you know what? Let's do something a little spicy here. Let's do something that like, let's go for that extra little musical thing, like, you know, because I do want to like improve at the instrument, you know, so I'll just be like, let's do this really hard thing here just because I haven't done something like that before, you know, but then I'll like sandwich it in between two things that are like very comfortable, you know?
Yeah. And you're one of the people that, like sometimes I'll go back and like, I think I got recommended one of your older things. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I was like, oh, hey, this is like little Jack. Maybe I can look at that and be like, I could do that now. But man, like even like younger Jack fucking blows me out of the water with that kind of shit. Is that something where it's like, if you put in the work up front and you get like crazy fast and technical, like you can kind of sit on your hands a little bit? Or are you like, do you look back at your old stuff and go like, man, I sucked back then? Or like,
no, dude, I'll keep it real with you. Sometimes I feel like I was better back then.
Really?
like not in a depressing way, but I was just trying, not trying harder, but I was in the sense of shredding, in the sense of playing guitar fast. I was trying harder back then because I was more concerned about like shredding or whatever. And now I feel like I'm becoming more of like a dad these days, and I'm more about like, let's just write like a hook and let's have like a really catchy thing. And I feel like I'm not at my A game as far as like raw technical speed goes, and like whatever you want to call that. So when I watch like my old videos, sometimes I'm like, bro, like I was like on fire back then. Holy crap, you know? And that's not to say that I'm in general not as good. I think that's the only part of me that was better, but I think every other part of me is better now because I've just allocated my efforts into songwriting and production and writing a catchy, memorable melody. That's where I decided I wanted to do that, you know? But it's pretty much like, you can kind of relate it to like lifting weights, right? So it's like, you know, if you could lift 400 pounds, you know, back then, it's not like that just sticks with you. Like, you know, if you don't lift for like 5 years, you're going to have to work your way back up. And that's kind of the way that like guitar playing is too. So like, you know, in terms of like shredding, which is like just speed, that was like my A game right there, because I was just working at it super hard, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. But would you say that you could get back there a lot easier than you did initially?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like you never forget, you don't forget the mental part. It's just you just have to get your muscles like back, you know? You just have to get the momentum there. So I could literally just like sit there and have a metronome going and just, you know, just get back to that. But yeah, like I definitely feel like some of my older videos, like those were like shreddy, you know what I mean? Like, and yeah, it was fun. So it's definitely not a case of like, oh, I'm so much better now. Like I think as a musician, I'm better now, but in terms of like the technical ability and the guitar playing, like I think back then I was like technically just crazy, you know?
We kind of touched on it a little before, but you're in a band, and also you live with Jules, who's our mutual friend who was on last week's podcast. So you do a lot of, you know, playing with other people. Can we just talk about how fucking great that is?
Yeah, dude. I mean, just like jamming and stuff. It's like medicine, dude. It's bigger than we realize. You know what I mean? Like as humans or whatever, we don't fully get what that's doing for us, like on like a spiritual level or whatever. And I feel that way about going to a concert, you know, because like everybody leaves a concert feeling good. And it's like, is it because you enjoyed the music, or is there something like deeper there, like some humanistic like thing, you know? Because when you think about music and the idea of playing with people, that's just been going on since like we were like, you know, hunting freaking saber-toothed tigers with rocks and shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just a very fundamentally important part of the human experience, I feel like. And that doesn't just apply to the people playing the music, but the people listening as well, you know? So it's crazy. I think about that all the time, especially like during COVID and stuff when I haven't been jamming, and I'm just like, man, that's missing. You know, I miss that, you know?
You, me, and Jules had like a big like jam sesh at my place one time, and I came out of that like shit, like I just like got better in the last like hour just by like kind of, I don't know, there's something in the human brain that's very like monkey see, monkey do, you know, like it's probably the same thing with listening to it too, but there's also the extra element of like, okay, yeah, like now that we have that sort of like Game Boy Link cable, like bling, you know, like, okay, I'm seeing what you're doing sort of in real time, and I can, you know, I can't imitate it, but I can get a little closer than I would have before.
Yeah, I love how you put that Game Boy Link cable. It's like it's so true, dude. There's an energy there, and it's just like you can't describe it. Like my favorite thing is playing with like a drummer, you know what I mean? Because it's like you have those moments where your drummer is like doing their thing, and then you have those moments where your guitar is like perfectly just playing the exact same feel as they are, and then it almost becomes like one sound, you know what I mean? And it becomes like this one unified thing. And I just remember those experiences of just being like, this is crazy, because like I can feel my hands, like I'm not in control of my hands right now, like they're playing the notes, and that's it. I'm not in control of this, like it's like something else is taking over. And it's just like we are like completely together on this like music right now, you know? And the same thing, obviously, it's not just with drummers, like it's with guitar players too. Like if you're like perfectly harmonizing something, you're like, that's weird. How did that just happen? You know?
Yeah, when you lock in on some shit, it is genuinely one of the coolest fucking feelings on the planet.
That's again, going back to earlier, it's like, you know, it's like I love the independence of making my own music, but then there's also just, dude, like jamming. It's just like, that's just amazing. It's such a great experience, you know? And it's not only like with musicians too. I mean, like, I feel like if we were talking to like someone on like a football team or like an esports team, it's like, I feel like there's like that feeling too, you know? It's just that feeling of like being like so tight with somebody. It's like, you know when to move in, you know when to do this, and you don't have to like communicate that, you know? It's just that understanding, you know? And I love that. It's just like this crazy human brain shit that happens, you know?
I think there's a lot of overlap with music and just a lot of things in human nature. I was talking to Kellen the other day, talking about that first guitar video that I did for Sounds Goodish, and she was like, dude, that's basically how I learned to draw.
Yeah, for sure. It's obviously it's so different because it's not music, you know, but it is like the same idea.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of conduits that can kind of activate that part of the human psyche. I think one thing that makes instruments in particular really cool, though, is that when you manage to tap into that, it's like connected with a visceral sense, like hearing. So it just sort of comes out and like blasts you right in like a primal part of your brain.
Yeah.
And you're just like, whoa.
Yeah, it definitely, it's like, and it's also just like pretty much I don't know if it's like a fact, but it has to be like the oldest art form, right? Because I feel like even before people drew on stuff, like they had to have like hit rocks together. I don't know. Like,
yeah, maybe.
It's definitely,
I'm not sure.
It's definitely quite old.
Yeah, you know what?
The,
like birds and shit sing at each other. So things that aren't even human beings kind of engage in it to a certain extent. So it probably is.
Dude. And yeah, it's like, again, it's like, it's not even exclusive to being a musician. I mean, just like seeing a concert or like listening to that song that just like hits you in that way. There's just nothing like it, you know? And it's just, I don't know, it can make you like, it can totally just like get into your brain and like freaking fix something for you. And it's not even like, it's like an EDM song, you know what I mean? You're like, it's crazy how that works, but it's totally a thing, man. It's like some crazy nature, spirituality, human shit that like, I feel like we just don't understand it, but like, I don't know. I don't really need to understand it. It's just cool how that works, you know?
Fuck yeah, dude.
Because I know for me, like, you know, if I'm like, I don't even need to be playing a guitar, but if I hear like a sick sounding guitar, like that's like I'm there, you know what I mean? I feel I'm like activated, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm also ToxicxEternity. I did it too. I did it first.
That's right. It's, I don't know, I feel like as like humans or whatever, it's just like our brains need something to like do, you know what I mean? It's just so important to like know what that thing is for you and to always like do that thing, right? You know, whether it's music or it's cooking or it's freaking painting miniature figures, I don't like, you know what I mean? Like it's just any of that stuff. It's definitely it's important to do that, and maybe one day we'll figure out what the hell is actually happening with why striking a piece of wood with metal strings on it makes us want to like throw our bodies in a circle pit and start beating each other up. But until then, you know, we'll just keep doing it anyway and enjoy it. So
hell yeah, dude.